Thank you very much, Pooja. You're very kind. And I've been following how you've been becoming more and more followed, and your show is becoming much more valued as people understand the different topics that you approach each week. So yeah, as I've said before, I really do appreciate people coming online. And, you know, we know, both Pooja and I know, that you are very competent people in your own organizations. I know that we've got people on here, some may have a PhD, some may be the CEO of the organization, I don't know. So really this is more of a conversation. And what I'm hoping to share with you tonight is just a slightly different perspective about leadership than you may have encountered, or you may have, but it's just an opportunity for us to take a breath and think about ourselves in our organization. Who are we in our organization? And I honestly believe that if you can't lead yourself, then you have very little chance of leading others. So part of tonight is about reflecting inwards and thinking about our own leadership. And we're going to give you a bit of time to answer some questions later on, which we're going to pose around each of our pearls of leadership, which we're going to be sharing with you tonight. So I see that we've got more and more people online. And Pooja, I think I'm going to start the PowerPoint, because I'll try and go through the first section fairly quickly. And then I'd like us to sit in a bit of a reflection and thinking. So I hope that everyone has a bit of paper beside them so that they can write down some reflections, and then we'd really love to hear back from you and make the evening a little bit more interactive and hear a little bit more about you and your situation in leadership. So I'm going to have a go at sharing the screen. And I'm looking for that. And I'm looking to... And we're into a PowerPoint. And I know sometimes when there's PowerPoint, you feel a little bit distant from everyone. But I would love you to stay involved. And I love to have a mantra at the beginning of everything that I start to do. And our mantra tonight is going to be: success follows action. So at the end of tonight, I want you to actually have action items that you will be able to go into your organization and start to work with when you get back in there. You know, we're lucky we've got a bit of a long weekend coming up, but you're probably going to be back on Monday. I figure I'll probably only be back on Wednesday. But success follows action. So I know you're all muted, but say it out loud. Success follows action. And now we want to know what kind of action. So we've been, talking for a few weeks about these 5 pearls of leadership, and we've itemized them on the screen here. And these are what we'll be following. So vision and values. What is the leadership style? What is the kind of communication? How are people developing relationships? And then I've put in one called the end game, because I want everyone online, including myself and Pooja tonight, to think about what is our end game? What is our goal? What are we working towards? And at the end of the night, what do we want to put in place towards that end game? So I'm going to start us off in a forest. And you probably didn't expect to be here, and nor did I, actually, until last night when I thought about this. And in the forest, you walk in and you see all these magnificent trees. And we kind of imagine to ourselves that each tree is in there and they're in competition with one another. And every single tree's got to put roots down and it's looking for nutrients, and it's looking for water, and it's stretching up into the sky, and it's trying to get air, and it's trying to get sunlight, and it's competing with all these other trees to do that. So it's kind of looking after itself. And that's how people imagined forests were. Until recently, they discovered a thing, and you've got to listen carefully, called the Wood Wide Web. I'm not talking about the World Wide Web. Seriously, it's the Wood Wide Web. WOOD. And it looks like this. Under the roots, under the ground, these trees are not standing separately. They are all connected. And I'm going to tell you how it's connected, and it's quite fantastic. So for centuries, fungi were widely held to be harmful to plants, parasites that cause disease and dysfunction. But more recently, it's become understood that certain kinds of common fungi exist in subtle symbiosis with plants, bringing about not infection, but connection. These fungi send out gossamer fine fungal tubes called hyphae, which infiltrate the soil and weave themselves into the tips of the plant roots at a cellular level. Roots and fungi combine together and they form a thing which is called a mycorrhiza. And that word itself is like a growing together of the Greek word fungus, mycos, and root, rhiza. So a mycorrhiza. And in this way, individual plants are joined to one another by an underground hyphal network, a dazzlingly complex and collaborative structure, which has become known as the Wood Wide Web. So I'm hoping that you find that fascinating, because I honestly do. I just love this idea that all the plants are involved and collaborating and communicating and being connected through these hyphae at a cellular level. And what is happening through this communication is that nature is giving instant feedback. So if some trees are experiencing some kind of change in the ecosystem, somehow the message is getting through this mycorrhiza, all the way to other trees. And this is really part of the work of a phenomenal leadership expert in the world, very modern, called Kathleen E. Allen, who's written this magnificent book called Leading from the Roots. So nature gives instant feedback, and that is how ecosystems adjust themselves. And she's called this beautiful book Leading from the Roots, and I highly recommend it to you. So we're talking not about autocratic leadership or distributed or democratic leadership or whatever it is that we understand terminology, but organic leadership. So we're pretending almost like our organization is like one of these forests. And, you know, all these trees, us, are also looking for our soil, our light, our whatever it is, and we're chasing our dream and doing our own thing. But just like the fungi, every single action of the person in the organization is having an impact. It is giving a message, whether you're conscious of it or not. It is going to be transmitted all the way through your organization, just like this root, the way the roots are connected. And now I'm going to tell you a little story. There are these two little fish, right? And they're swimming along in the water and they're happy. And then this big older fish comes along, older dude, and he says, "Good morning, boys. How's the water?" And they say, "Oh, yeah, I think it's fine." And then the dude swims off and the two fish are left behind. And the one looks at the other. One's called Finn and one's called flabby, I don't know what their names are, and they say, what the heck is water? Where are they? They are 100% in the water, but they don't know that they are there, right? So this was a lovely speech given by David Foster Wallace at Kenyon College in 2005. And what he was saying was that sometimes the most important things in life are invisible to us. And so like the fish can't see the water, sometimes we can't see the culture that has infiltrated our organization. And sometimes we have a beautiful and very positive culture, but it's rarely going to be like that by default. It's very rarely going to be like that unless we thought about it. So our culture could be quite toxic. So you can see that people might have toxic thoughts or toxic ideas. We can see that there could possibly be a lot of gossip and undermining that happens in our organizations, making people hurt. And then, you know, I love this other little icon because it's that passive aggression you get, where people say, oh yeah, of course I'm on board, of course I'm going to do that. And then the minute you leave the room or the minute they go back into their own space, they're like, oh, last thing I'm going to do. So really they're wearing a mask, and they certainly not in a very complementary way working with the leadership of that organization, or possibly even with another team or with another person. And some organizations have a complete lack of direction. And I know that probably you're coming from organizations where you really do have goals and you know where you're going. But I'd like us to refine that tonight. I'd like us to really think about what our organization is like and how we are in that organization. So from this metaphor, we see leadership as an organism. And what we understand from that is that no action in the forest or in the organization can be static. No matter what it is, it's going to have an impact. And it changes the tone and it changes the culture of the organization. And I'm sure you've all heard on the nature theme, the butterfly effect. Like sometimes the tiniest flap of a butterfly's wings can have an impact somewhere else. So now we come back to the title of our talk, which is, why have we used this metaphor of a pearl? And the pearl is also showing us something about organic leadership. And this is really where I want us to do the work, because it fits with our idea of creating leadership based on nature. So how is a pearl formed? Okay, like many natural processes, the birth of a pearl takes time. But when the process is complete, the result is absolutely stunning. And the pearl comes about because the oyster inside its body, and I'll show you a bit of the anatomy in the next slide, it gets a tiny little irritant, a piece of grit or something goes under its mantle, and it's very uncomfortable and it certainly doesn't like it. It's something that shouldn't be there. So what does the oyster do? It starts to excrete mother of pearl, or what we call nacre, and layer by layer by layer, it creates that irritation, it works on it, and it creates something beautiful. So you can see here the mantle is all around here, and it protects the body of the oyster. And then if something penetrates and gets underneath there, that's where some oysters have to create these magnificent pearls to deal with their problem. And in the modern cultured pearls, or, you know, they might actually physically insert something into the mantle, so that in riverbeds and in the ocean and wherever, so that that pearl is formed. They actually cause it to have some trouble so that it has to work on it. And its solution is this magnificent gem, which we just love so much. So the pearl's response is to create beauty from discomfort and from pain. And I know that's a hard journey, but sometimes if we want to change the culture of an organization, that's what we have to do, because we can't change anybody else. We can only change ourselves. I can't say, Pooja, wake up tomorrow morning and make sure you behave better. Because Pooja's not going to do it because I asked her to do it. She's only going to do it when from her internal organism, she's being told to do it for herself. And it's like that with everyone. Whether you're teaching young students, you cannot teach them. You've got to inspire them to learn. And it's the same with your colleagues. And, we lead upwards, we lead downwards, and we lead ourselves. There's 3 levels. And it took me a very, very long time in my life to be leading upwards. I didn't realize I could do that. But as an early childhood director in a school, when things went wrong and my staff weren't happy, I had to go and find a way to speak with my principal to make sure, or the finance director, sometimes, who was in charge of all the money, to say, this is wrong. We got to do this. And these are the reasons why. And I very seldom used to go, because I also learned early in life, don't take someone a problem because they hate that. But I would go with a problem and a solution. This could work if we put in place these 1 or 2 or 3 things. So in my small way, before I even knew about this idea of organic leadership and organic organizations, I was trying to create something out of a problem, something better, a pearl. So the one thing that we were talking about in this forest is that there's always instant feedback. And I know we all talk about it. You haven't given me the right feedback. I never get any feedback. Let me just give you a tiny bit of feedback. Would you mind if I gave you a little bit of feedback? And we hear it all the time. So the feedback is going backwards and forwards. We also always concerned, and especially now since COVID, with everyone's well-being. And I'm hoping it's becoming more so. And Pooja, you're doing a great job raising awareness about this. And the final thing that I want to talk about is intentionality. Because remember, I said we can have a default culture, or we can get involved and create something. So feedback is reciprocal. Like whether you are conscious of it or not, if someone's giving you feedback, you are giving them feedback. And if you are giving them feedback, they are coming back at you. It's 100% reciprocal, whether it's conscious or unconscious, because you are acting and reacting. So we can ask ourselves, what feedback are we receiving and what feedback are we giving? And sometimes, 7% of the message is conveyed verbally. So that's the feedback. But 38% of the message conveyed in the voiced intonation. And then 55% of the message is conveyed non-verbally. So you're giving away a lot more than you think you are. When you say, I wonder, could I have a chat with you in my office at 2 p.m. this afternoon? 7% of the message is, oh, she wants to talk to me. 55% of the message says, I'm in trouble. That's how it is. And then there's this beautiful thing, and I thought I'll just put it in here. So Dr. Tricia Stafford's research of 2012 says 8% of the message is conveyed verbally, 12% is conveyed verbally, and 80% is conveyed about how we are feeling on the day, what you are leaking out of your energy. So it's often not a science when we are communicating. But what I'd love us to do is to reframe this idea of feedback as a kind of nourishment. I love that word feed. So when you're giving feedback to someone, let's really think about how we can offer that feedback or provide the feedback or even sometimes accept the feedback and see it rather as nourishment, something that is good, as opposed to always something that is critical or negative or aggressive. So sure, we all want things to change, but if we're going to stick in the critical, negative aggression, we aren't going to accomplish it as well. So I want us to just reframe feedback as an opportunity to give something that nourishes others and nourishes the organization. I mean, we're talking about a vibrant organization. We want it to be a great place. So we can overtly or covertly change the feedback loop with small actions and small thoughts. So you don't have to do anything huge. Like someone's come and they've been mean to you, or they've said something and you respond very critically. But you think to yourself, how can I process this in a different way? So it might even be just understanding where they're coming from, just seeing it from their perspective, and all of a sudden, or accepting it from whence it comes and not taking it as personally. So I want us to talk about this word harbinger, and it comes from research, and it's a word that is used about how to cope with feedback. And a harbinger is a person or a thing that announces or signals the approach of another, kind of like a messenger. And tonight, I want you to create your own messengers. What is your harbinger or your messenger going to be that is going to signal some tiny change in a situation? What is your harbinger? What is your messenger? It's almost like your first tiny act, your first tiny move. So this beautiful flower is a harbinger of spring. It's telling us that spring is coming. So we can overtly or covertly change the feedback. So we can change it by telling someone and saying something, which just switches things around, or in our own mind, covertly, behind our eyes, we are in some way starting to develop a way to deal with that. Our messenger to ourselves or to the world about how we're going to deal with these situations. So each small change in the organic web will reset the whole thing. So that small change, that little harbinger is going to go out and it's going to start talking to this biome, to this ecosystem. And so slowly but surely over time, you could be responsible for changing the whole organization if you work at it hard enough, or improve it if it's already fabulous. So our feedback can become lustrous, like our pearl. Now we can do this in and create this safe environment in two ways. So the informal way is often just how we behave. It's how you talk to people, how you greet them in the morning, how quickly you respond to requests. Just generally in yourself, your aura, because you remember we said we all linked through aura and energy and all this sort of stuff in this biome of the organization. So what we do informally has a big impact, but also we can take steps formally. And these are some of the things like changing the way people have conversations in meetings, or, developing norms and protocols. There's lots of formal things that if you are a leader, you can put in place. Small things formally, like do you celebrate people's birthdays? Do you write letter? It's just things that are on the calendar that may not have been there before. So there's different ways that we can do this. And I want you to think about, if you're wanting to change something, or if you're wanting to understand something, understanding it first in a personal way and a personal informal way. What can I do informally and personally? And what can we do informally and professionally? So there might be some things that just the whole organization does that is kind of informal but fun. So, maybe it's that you someone different brings a cake every Friday. It's not a huge deal. It's quite informal, but it changes the organization. Then personally, you can formally put in steps to develop your own leadership. And then the organization can formally put in steps to change the culture and the leadership of the organization. And then the other word I wanted us to think about is well-being. So if we wish, we can also reframe well-being as filling a literal well. We can do it for ourselves and we can do it for others. So, if the way we go about this is to understand what needs quenching. When a plant has no water, it wilts. And how and why are we wilting? And what is it that we can just provide to perk people up so that we, in a sense, the well-being is that we're feeling that our thirst is quenched, that we have everything we need and we feel perky and bright and vibrant. But, if everyone's wilting, it's not really going to help our organization. Finally, the intentionality. And we can work on all of this informally and formally. I want you to really think about that because in our questions, we're going to go through that as well. So the intentionality is to work on both the informal and formal ways to create culture. We have to adopt intentionality because it's not going to happen, as I've said, by default. And I've chosen the beautiful eye of an owl here because I think they're so wise and they fit in with our nature theme. So we're gathering some natural things all the way as we go along. So much of this engagement tonight is more about questions than answers. I mean, Pooja and I, we don't know your context, we don't know your strengths, we don't know your pain, we don't know your vision, but we can pose some questions for you to think about your own leadership and the leadership of your organization. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing screen and we'll make the evening a little less formal and maybe we'll hear from some people. And then I want to, before we do that, let's just quickly go through what those things were again. Vision and values, style, communication, and relationships, and the end game. So vision and values is how you set your compass for yourself and your organization. And really, without vision, you don't have a pathway. You don't know where you're going. You could get lost. What is your style of leadership? And oh my goodness, there are some real styles, that I'll do it all on my own style, or there's lots of different styles. What is your style? How do you communicate? What is it? How do you develop relationships? Are they all like barbed wire, or are you managing to get some great integration in your relationships? And then what really is your goal? What is your end game in terms of where you see your leadership going? So I'm going to stop sharing just there. And we'll see if, I just want to, I hope I haven't lost you. Oh, there we go. So we have got some questions for you. So we do hope you've got some pen and paper. But just before we go there, we'd love to hear from some people about how they perceive leadership and if what they've heard, adds something to what they already understand as leadership or not. Well, we just want to hear from you.
You can unmute yourself and speak, any one of you. If you want to share something, you can unmute yourself and speak.
I'm sure there's someone brave enough out there. Remember, success follows action, not sitting behind your screen.
Okay, so Johnson is asking, how do you deal with toxic leaders?
Yes, you can't. I would love someone else to answer that question as well, because this is the thing that we're trying to talk about, is how you as an individual in an organization can release your power to be able to subtly change the atmosphere in your organization and work out the ways that you have to engage with that person. So that is, it's a really great question, because very often it is a leader who is toxic. Not always. You might just, so you, and you might have an organization where there's no toxicity, and I'd be really pleased if that's your situation. But toxic leaders are not going to have a healthy biome or a healthy, culture. So is there anybody else who'd like to give Johnson some advice about how you might deal with toxic leaders? I don't know if anyone's happy to actually put their camera on and show us their faces. I really love that if it's possible. Veena, hello. It's so much nicer to know there's a person on the other side of this black screen.
I know it feels very difficult to talk to the black screens.
Yes, it's difficult. So Veena, are you in an organization?
I have been into education sector for the last 4 decades, including one like corporate sector of content development company too.
Yes.
Srimohi Bhattacharya there happens to be my colleague also from the same organization.
Right. And
what I feel is like you will always find toxic people in the organization. It's not only the leadership. There are invisible people who will make a negative impact in the work culture. There are visible people who will make a toxic impact about whatever you are talking about. The way you talked about an example that on the face you say that yes, I will do it, and the moment you turn around, oh, that's the last thing that I will do that, right? So there is always a combination of different personalities in any organization. Now, probably what I can tell you, share with my experiences, how do you pair up or make a buddy system?
Okay, that's interesting.
Buddy system, like that's what I try to do. At times you have to have a person because the organization needs it, but his or her contribution, like personality wise, impacts the other way around. So how can you put that person with a buddy with whom she or he carries along, and that through that person you are trying to mold that personality? It might take a little longer, but that works out. That's how I have done with my students and with my organizations too. The second point that I can share is one has to be very firm and clear in communicating that, okay, this is not right. And this is the point, the version. So I don't mean that bluntly we say it is not right, but we shows pros and cons of whatever the person is taking an action or speaking about a guideline that is to be shared. So these are the 2 points from my experience to all of you. Thank you for giving me that opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Veena. Yes, and I think the buddy system is great because it's using people as a resource. If you know that you are not able to get through to that person that well, so Johnson, maybe the situation
go through the other way around.
Yeah, if you don't feel like you're going to make, it's like sometimes I say to my husband, I really need to do this or that or the other, or this is a great idea, and he ignores me. But then if someone at the golf club or someone someone else says that was a great idea, then he'll come home and he'll tell me my idea is good. So it depends. People listen to people that they have some kind of relationship with. Yes. But it's not easy dealing with toxicity. But that's why I'm wanting us to be aware that our own energy that we bring in every day. And I know it can get ground down over time, because you can go in and be really chipper at the beginning of the year, and by the end you're a wilted flower. But I like what Venus had to say, using the resources. And yes, things might be wrong and things might be right, but you don't want to directly blame someone for something. It's almost like sometimes you have to build up by telling them that they did something well. You have to wait. It's like with children in your classroom. You have to wait for the opportunity when you say, like they come into a meeting every day and they're late, and then they come in the meeting one day and they're early, and so you say, gosh, it's so good to see you, because now no one's going to waste any time today, we can just get going. And that's all you have to say. And then the next time they go, oh God, you actually noticed something I did. But it's something positive. Yeah, but I don't want to do all the talking. So is there anyone out there who wants to
There is
share
another
something?
thing which you just spoke about. I would like to add that something I used to do it as a leading person, that how do you confess? Confessions was one of the workshops that we used to do within in-house trainings only, right? So confession that, okay, I did this, probably I could have done this way and it could have been better. So it starts from the person at the top. When you start confessing that you also can go wrong, it gives the confidence to the other person also to confess that, okay, I have done it, I accept my mistake, and then probably I will rectify it in the future. That's another thing. Just because you were talking about that, it came to me that we have been doing that also with students and teachers alike.
Yep. So then they become more they're less risk averse, because they don't feel like it's a huge risk to have made a mistake, or to feel like they could enhance or improve something. That's great. All right. Well, maybe in the chat we'll try this. There are 4 groups of these questions, and they're all fairly similar. So it's asking you to think about your own visions and values. So you can see them in the chat, or maybe I'll read them out quickly. So think about vision and values in your workplace. And you can equally do this if you don't want to talk or think about your organization tonight. It might be that in your community or in your family, this is more important. Think about your personal vision and values and your organization's vision and values. What drives you? What makes you tick and makes you want to get better? And what is your organization's vision? What is working in that vision in your life, and what is working for that vision in the organization? What is missing maybe in your vision, and what is missing in the vision of the organization? And if you don't want to answer these questions tonight, that's fine, but I think they're worth thinking about. And that's what I wanted you to come tonight, so that you had something grist for the mill to think about. Is there an alignment between your vision and the vision of the organization? Sometimes I've worked in organizations where I felt terribly uncomfortable because nothing aligned. I didn't believe in anything that was happening. And so I consciously moved. And I know it's not easy for people to always do that, because jobs are not hard to come by. But sometimes you have to take yourself out of somewhere and put yourself somewhere where you are more comfortable, where your vision aligns with the organization's vision. So I don't know if you'd like to have a go at trying to get a few answers. Shall I give you a couple of minutes and then we'll hear from somebody? Let's try it with the first one. So we'll give you 2 minutes. Have a look at the questions. What is your vision? What's your organization's vision? What can improve? And then for every section, what is the harbinger? What is the little mini act that you can do tomorrow to improve that pearl of vision. So I'd love us to come up with your little messengers, your little harbingers for each of these, the vision, the communication, the relationships, and the style. How can you, so just, I'll give you, let's say 2 minutes. Pooja, are you happy with that?
Yes, of course. And it's, by the time they all think about answers, I just wanted to add this, in classroom, as Veena was mentioning that confession, I have observed this when I'm in the classroom. Initially, when I started my teaching career, I have observed that teachers, students think that teachers know everything, and they have this fear to ask question, and they feel that teacher may think that I'm a fool or I'm stupid. So I have started giving them this impression that even in classroom, while writing on the board, I just keep on, whenever I'm writing a difficult word, I just make sure that I turn to one of the students and ask, is this the correct spelling? Can you please check? Or, I just pretend like I don't remember something and ask them to search and tell me. So that, gives them confidence. Yeah. And and they started interacting more compared to the earlier days when I used to just go to the classroom and use all my knowledge and just deliver the lecture. And when I started behaving that, I need their help to learn, they realized that it is, yes, even ma'am could also make mistake, or she could also forget, she could also, be unaware of something. So that is very important, because most of the time teachers in the classroom try to portray themselves as perfect creatures, and that is where that distance, I think, we create that. Even I have unfortunately witnessed teachers giving some wrong explanation also.
You're
Instead
right.
of saying that, give me a day's time, I will, I'll just refer and get back to you. I have witnessed teacher giving wrong explanation so that they prove that, I'm a teacher and I know everything. And that is, I think that is one probably bad attitude we have to, many teachers have to come out and just accept when you don't know something. Make sure you tell children that I will come back with an answer, because now Gen Z is very fast, and the moment they go home or they get their mobile, they search for the answer and they'll know that you just randomly said something.
Yes.
That leaves wrong impression. And if you immediately confess that, yes, I don't know, I will read about it, I'll get back to you. So that, I think, makes them trust you more, and that builds long-term trust. I think it's
That's
beautiful
perfectly
idea.
right. That's perfectly right, Pooja, because I think that I learned in the beginning of my teaching career. Our principals and mentors told us that if you do not know anything, just say that the time being we are parking this question, we'll think over it. All of you also think over it, and we'll find a solution out of this.
Yes.
We learned this right in the beginning of teaching career, that this is what we were taught by our mentors, that don't try to fool the student, even though there were no mobiles way back in 1978 when I started my teaching career. But that's how it was. Accepting that I do not know. So I had learned a word. I'm not a walking encyclopedia, but I'll find out an answer and get back to you. But then you have to ensure that you get back to them also.
Yes.
In order to build up that trust. You have to ensure that you are on that problem till it is solved.
True.
Yeah. So we're talking actually about a relationship of trust, but I see Adesi and Hannah's got a hand up. So
yes,
are you willing to share some information with us?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we hear you very well.
So my name is Adeshiana from Nigeria. I'm a classroom teacher. So I teach in underserved community in Ogun State. So my own personal vision is to build confidence, like to raise learners that are confident in themselves and they are able to solve problems on their own, to think critically and solve problems on their own. So to achieve this, part of my value, my own value is number one, collaboration, effective communication, because I believe that this problem cannot be solved alone. I can't do it alone on my own. I need to collaborate with people in that school, like the teachers that are working there before, so that we can work together with their parents to see how we can communicate and bring out the desired results in these pupils. I teach in primary 3 and my learners are very small. So to achieve this vision, I think your own explanation too is very helpful today. It's very helpful that you need to make the place a safe, and then the communication needs to be effective for me to achieve that kind of thing in my organization. So that's my contribution. Thank you.
That
Great.
is so lovely. Thank you, Aditya. And it's lovely to hear that. And you really considered that question really well. I think that was such a beautiful answer. And we might go, I'll pop up some, I'm having a bit of trouble getting back into my chat here. I think I've used up all my space because I wanted to put the next questions in the chat and I can't seem to find the box. Maybe if I open up my screen. No? Do you have the sheet? Or what I'll do, I'm going to just delete this. I don't know, I can't get into my own chat. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to read it out, the next lot of questions, and then you can think about them because they're very, very similar. So the next lot of questions are, what is your leadership style, and what is the leadership style of your organization? What is working in your leadership style, and what is working in the leadership style of the organization? What is missing in your leadership style, and what is missing in the leadership style of the organization? And then, is there an alignment between those? And then finally, what is your one harbinger act? And you know that one of what you've just spoken about, confess, is a harbinger act. It changes. It's something that is telling people that things are changing. So what is your harbinger act that you can plan as for your style as a leader? So I'd love to hear some people's ideas about style, what style you have.
Yes, anyone? Let me also check in YouTube. Someone is answering. Johnson, can you please unmute and speak if you're comfortable?
Hi guys, hi from Melbourne. Sorry, I'm multitasking and I'm listening to you guys at the same time as well. So
that's all right, but you're using some interesting language, discursive or dialogic. So would you explain that style?
Yeah, certainly. Look, I work with young kids in primary school all the way up to tertiary. So I lecture at university as well. Primary mathematics education, that's my specialty. I have actually presented to numeracy leaders at ISV a couple of years ago, Lillian. So
fantastic.
Very familiar area to me. Look, what you asked a really good question, and thanks for all your pearls of wisdom. They're really good to listen to. And watch as you were presenting as well. What I was meaning by dialogic is that, with our current pedagogies, you have to engage students. So there's the old traditional style of chalk and talk is gone. We can't engage kids anymore. We certainly know that here in Australia. They're very knowledgeable. Kids have a lot of knowledge. So the entire pedagogies have shifted from, teaching as transmission of knowledge to teaching as a dialogic process where you're working with creative, critical thinking, problem-solving skills. And so our focus is more on, how to teach kids problem-solving skills and strategies rather than knowledge, because, as you said, they can get it from the internet. Kids are certainly aware, and adults as well. They do have a lot more knowledge than us in many instances, but what they lack is the application of that knowledge. So that's what I meant by discursive dialogic style, where you're engaging your students, you're engaging them in a conversation where their voice is heard, their agency is there in the whole session, they feel part of what's happening.
Yes, and I agree that is so valuable, but not only for students. And in your organization with your fellow workers, your colleagues, it's also great to have a dialogue, where everyone's contributions are valued as agents. And I think, you asked about the toxic leader earlier. And this really is one of the things where over time, hopefully one can tweak it so that in the organization, everyone gets to have a point of view. And so there's a very big difference between having a conversation with your colleagues and having a dialogue, because in a dialogue, you ask for responses and put them all out on the table. And then as a group, you get together and evaluate what might be the way to go forward. So, you want the agency across your staff or across your whole organization, just as you want with the students. And unless in your organization, people have engaged with ideas and been part of the plans and part of the decisions, you will get that toxicity. And very often a toxic leader, becomes more toxic the less people understand how they are operating, and it becomes a pattern that just builds on itself. So sometimes they just have to own that maybe they're not the best socializers, they don't have the social skills, and just say to you in that confession thing, look, I don't have these great social skills, so just bear with me, tell me when I'm doing it, and then I'll try my best, but I am still really trying to get this organization to work well. So yeah, thank you very much, Johnson, for coming in and helping us to talk about this.
Yeah,
So
certainly. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Lillian. No, you make a really good point, actually, because I'm involved at many different levels at both school and tertiary levels as well in many leadership positions, and I have seen many people with toxic leadership styles, and many of them are narcissists and they don't realize that. But I really love what you said about leading from the roots. I mean, it's I have a psychology background as well, so I'm very keen. I do study organizational psychology, so for me, that's absolutely spot on. When you're leading from the roots up, you're actually utilizing the collective wisdom of people, the knowledge, the skills, you're giving them agency, and the organization is far more richer for it. Whereas when it's one person top down, it becomes a very toxic leading environment, and eventually it leads to a dictatorial style of leadership, which doesn't give anyone any agency. So yeah, fantastic. Love that idea. Well done.
Yeah, well, the thing about that leading from the roots also is, if you think about that forest, it's not just the trees, it's the roots, it's the everything, and everything's important. And if as an organization, if everyone doesn't understand that, then this book is incredible. I think it'll be worthwhile for everyone to read Leading from the Roots. And yeah, thank you very much for that. So the other two things that we were thinking about was communication and relationship building. And the questions are very simple. So very similar, should I say. So we probably don't have time tonight for everyone to answer those questions. But again, it's like, what is my role in developing relationship? What kind of communicator am I? What role has the organization got in building relationships, informally and formally? What, you know, and then at the very end, we want to think about the end game. We really want to know where we're going and to create a step for ourselves so that we can feel like we're being really proactive in our organization, and understanding that we lead ourselves, leading downwards, leading upwards, but being much more intentional and much more aware of it. Because I think then you're building a culture consciously as opposed to just accepting what's there. And I think a lot of the time we get so tired because there's so much to do that we forget about creating culture. And Johnson, I don't know if you've ever come across the philosophy of the Reggio Emilia schools in Italy, in northern Italy, because that was the first place that I'd heard that, you know, we don't have to inherit a culture, we can create it. And I think if we just go away with that idea that we you know, that we are an ecosystem, that everybody is important, we all agents, and I think it can change the mindset about how we deal with people. And when we are seen to do that, we inspire others. And slowly but surely, I think that those messages will go, as you imagine, remember those roots underneath the trees. I think that message, slowly but surely, in any system, things will change. So our feedback becomes more nourishing and we fill more people's wells, and hopefully over time it becomes more of how that culture works and things become more vibrant. So I hope people have gained some food for thought this evening. Pooja, I don't know, I'm sure you have something to say, my dear.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about this, you know, leading upwards and downwards and leading ourselves. I think, you know, and leading by example probably includes all this. And, you know, you were mentioning when you have discussed about this one, communication, that only 7% of it is actually, you know, words that communicate. And the thing is, you know, sometimes the action communicates, I think, a lot more than words. And when we are trying to be leaders, the very simple things also count. You know, I have seen this happening in my organization. If boss or if head of the organization sets a time for you to work, like, you know, if it is from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., I think head of the institution must be the first person to make sure that he is on time. He is at 8 a.m. Reporting to the office. So I think, you know, that is how he is communicating what needs to be done. If he just makes a rules, and this is a very simple example I'm saying, but it's just rules are there on the record, you know, on books and or in your employment management system, but you are not following it, then it is, you are not leading. And there are many other things that we ask as a leaders, you ask as others to do, but you are not practicing. I think practicing or acting in certain way that you are communicating is also is a great communication. I think this is the best communication that works. You know, that is what I have seen so far. When I was trying to lead upwards, as you were mentioning, you know, when I was trying to communicate that this is what needs to be changed and this is the change that we have to bring, they discussed with me, and for that moment they said, yes, this is really great ideas that we have to implement, but that didn't happen because I think probably I was not able to communicate clearly that what was my idea, but I was able to execute it from my end within the team. So I did that, and after showing the result, they had come back to me asking, I think we discussed something the other day. You said this. I think we are thinking now to implement this in other centers, other branches. So that is because I have done that, and I tried communicating through action, because I tried communicating verbally, we discussed, but that didn't work. So I thought, okay, sometimes you are not able to communicate your ideas wholly, probably you are not able to convince, because that's in your thoughts, that's in your vision. You implement that within your area of control, and you give the result, and you will be able to see that again bringing back same people asking you what you have done. And I think communication through action is probably implements everywhere. It might be leading ourselves or leading downwards and upwards. This is out of my experience that I wanted to share. And
Yeah, it's very, very important.
Go ahead.
No, I was just acknowledging what you're saying, because action always speaks louder than words. And our mantra is, success from action. So, I think the final thing I want to say is, based on what you've listened to this evening, and when you've considered some of these pearls that, they are creating pearls out of little difficulties, or what are the things that you would like to change or create or design or innovate? And then write down your points and your goals in a little manifesto, so it becomes very clear to you. And then determine for each of those points, like, what is going to be my little harbinger, my messenger? How am I going to do it? Like what Pooja did just then was decided, I'm going to show them. They can't hear what I'm saying. I'm going to show them. So that was that little trick, or that little thing, which then becomes evident to others, and it's the cause of change. But I want to thank everyone who's been online. We so appreciate, as I said at the beginning of our session. Thank you, Pooja, for hosting me once again on your lovely show. Thank you to everyone who shared their comments. Thank you, Veena. Thank you, Jonathan. I know he's busy and he's got other things happening, but we really appreciate that. And we hope to see you online another time. And Akhil, I haven't seen your face today.
Thank you so
But
much.
anyway.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lily. I think every time when you are here, I definitely get to learn a lot, and I think I get a bit more wiser. Thanks a lot for joining. Veena, thank you so much for all your inputs. And
I just want to add something that just came to my mind about that. What we learned was that if the leader can have the vision, values, and voices of
I
all
love it. I'm adding another V.
Okay.
I'm going to add another V. I love it, Veena.
Vision, values, voices. If they all become the same for all the stakeholders, probably we are all successful together. Win-win situation for everyone.
That's
Absolutely.
great.
Yes,
Great. Thank you. Are you well, Akhil?
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good today. What about you?
Good. Very good. Thank you. So did you think about leadership today?
Little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Thank you,
day.
Lovely to have you
everyone.
online.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
See you.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
See you next time.
Yeah.